Why, hello there everybody. Thanks for clicking on this video and joining in on how I make my rawhide ball bags. Traditionally, these were actually called tobacco canteens. So that's what it's widely reported on as being, tobacco canteens. Obviously, since buckskinners don't carry tobacco in these type of containers any longer, and since I do my own brain tanning, I have lots of little pieces of rawhide left over to make these pouches, these little ball bags. And I thought I'd just take a few moments and show you how I do it. For me, since I make a quantity of them at a time, I don't just sit down and do one and put it on my tray blanket. I'll probably make 30 or 40 total. And I have varying sizes: large, medium, small, and I have what I call a giganticus. This thing's huge. I'll show you. Well, hell, I'll just show you right now. By the time you get it sewed and swelled up, this is how big it really becomes. Whereas this is the medium, and then this is the small. And they are a little bit smaller than what the patterns are. And because I make so many at a time, it's convenient for me to have a pattern that I can just continuously trace out and cut out. Okay. Now, like anything else made out of rawhide, when it's dry, it's very difficult to work with. But when it hardens up, they're pretty solid and pretty stable. Okay. So, what you have to do is get your rawhide soaking for a day or maybe a little bit longer. Usually I go about a day and a half to make sure that they're really swelled up with water. Okay. And let me get the camera repositioned. I've got some that I've been soaking for a couple of days already. Well, in fact, before I do that, I spent all day yesterday cutting out all these large patterns. So, you know, like I said, when I sit down and make them, I sit down and make a bunch of them at a time. So anyhow, let me get the camera repositioned and I'll show you how I go from this point forward. So at this point, it's already assumed that you've soaked your rawhide, you've laid it out flat, and you've cut your patterns out. Been soaking them for a day or so. What I do is I pull them out of the water, put them on some paper, towel, and just kind of pat them dry a little bit. And I always look to put the flesh side to the flesh side. If you're dealing with a commercially produced rawhide, sometimes it's not so obvious to figure out, let me get in the camera here, figure out what the flesh side is. Since I produce most of my own rawhide, it's pretty easy for me to determine what the flesh side is. So now that I've got them patted somewhat dry, I lay the two pieces together and then I go to punching holes in them. But I don't punch all the holes at once. I punch maybe 5 or 6 and then I go and lace them up. So let me get that accomplished. Now, one thing that you'll want to keep in mind when you go to punching your holes, stay back off the edges just a little bit, just simply because when you go to stitch it up, you don't want to pull through the rawhide if you're dealing with rawhide that's a little on the thin side. Now, when I try to cut out my patterns, I try to make sure, and it's not always the case, but I try to make sure that the two pieces that I'm sewing together are relatively the same thickness. And I do use artificial sinew to sew these together. So how I attach it, get the thread started, is I leave a loop and then I put a little pigtail through it maybe 3-4 times and pull it real tight. Now, since this is rawhide, and it is, by the very definition, very tough and very strong, you can pull them really tight. Okay, and I always leave the little pigtail down just a little bit so that I can stitch it in place. Okay, now there's two different ways of doing this. I like to use what they call like a whip stitch, not a straight line stitch. Let me show you something here real quick. This little pouch here, I did a straight line stitch. Okay, and then this is when I did one that I did a whip stitch with, and you can see by comparison when they're stitched together they do look a little bit different. And there again, that's just a matter of what you prefer to have your stitching in your ball bag look like. So generally what I do is I get 3 or 4 stitches. I don't pull them tight until I get 3 or 4 ready to go, and then I pull them all tight at once. And bear in mind what's going to happen, because I'm pulling it real tight, it's going to cause all the edge of the leather to roll together. Like it just did right there. Don't worry about that, because when you go to fill it full of, I like using cream of wheat, it'll straighten out. So then I get that last stitch, I leave one hole open and bare. Well, not bare, but I leave it so that it's not tight. Get that underneath there. And then that way there, that leaves me some room to go ahead and realign the pieces so that when I go to punch them, punch holes in it, the pieces are aligned. Okay, I think you kind of get the gist of what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and shut the camera off, get it all stitched up, and then I'll show you what I do to fill it when I'm filling it with cream of wheat. Alrighty, I have it stitched together. Because the leather is a little thicker than some, it didn't curl as much as I had expected, but you can probably look at it and see that it's pulling here. Don't worry about that. Once again, you can see where it pulled at the top. I just kind of pull it flat, and then I insert the top. Let me get this done here and I'll show you. A wooden dowel. And then kind of open it just a little bit. Okay. And then I'll go to filling that, if I can keep it open enough, with cream of wheat. And I recommend using cream of wheat. When I first started making these, I was just using a really fine sand, and a lot of the guys that were using them for bullet bags, ball bags, they didn't like that idea of that sand possibly getting into their rifle barrels. So I now use cream of wheat. Alright, let me get this filled, and then I'll show you the next step. Now once it gets to the point to where I can't put any more in it, I'll take a wooden dowel, insert it, and then I'll start packing that cream of wheat down around the edges, and that straightens out where it's puckered, and it also swells it and gives the bag, the rawhide bag, its shape. Okay, and then I just continue on putting more in it until I get it filled. And obviously you can see I'm doing this over a metal tray because it does get a little messy. Put a little in, pack it down. So I pretty much got the desired shape that I'm looking for. I might pack it a little bit tighter down in here. You can actually look at it and see where you need to, move the cream of wheat to get a more, desired shape. But the thing that you want to keep in mind is even though you've got it to this point, continue packing as tight as you can, in particular right in through here. Okay? And if you're using a thinner piece of leather, let me show you why you want to pack it tight right in through here. If you can look right here, and if the camera can pick it up, it's kind of wrinkled. Now this is elk rawhide, and it was a very thin piece. You can kind of see that it's got some movement to it. But when I put the device in here to get the roundness, and I'll show you what I do for that in just a minute, it kind of, because the leather's thin, it kind of wrinkled it. So it just gives it character. Now if you have a thinner piece of leather and you don't like that, most people don't care about that, especially if they're just using it, for a ball bag. I've got one of these myself that I actually keep shot in it. It's very convenient because what I did with the plug is I went ahead and drilled the bottom of the plug to fit, I think it's 1 1/8 ounces of shot, number 7 shot. So if I'm going hunting with my smoothbore, I just pour some of the shot into the cup, into the dispenser right here, and I know that I have 1 1/8 ounces shot of number 7 bird shot. So it just makes it real handy. But as you can see, even at this point, even though it's a little wrinkled, it's pretty stable. And if you want to waterproof it, I'll just discuss this right now. Get some beeswax, get it liquid, put it in the beeswax, and then take like a hair dryer or something and just kind of, work the beeswax through and let the beeswax kind of run back off into your, your pan of molten beeswax. And you can do the same thing with the inside. And depending on what you want to do with these, I will tell you that as tight as I'm packing it right now, by the time it does dry out, it shrinks a little bit, and you'll have some little tiny gaps along the stitching seam. There again, depending on what you plan on using it for, you might want to make sure that you go and put some beeswax and seal up where the stitching is, okay? And you may be asking right now, what are some useful ideas? Well, the obvious one is a ball bag to carry your balls in. Some in the past have purchased these to make rattles. They'll put little beads in it, obviously, put a stick on it and make a rattle for a baby. Very good for that. And the smaller ones, I carry one like this on a lanyard around my neck, and I keep my percussion caps in it. So it's very good for that. And I also know that a lot of the buckskinners like to buy these. They'll seal them off really good, and then they'll put salt in it. So like if you're up on the shooting range and you need to, rejuvenate your electrolytes, you can put some salt in it and carry salt and use it as a little salt dispenser. Just a couple of ideas that you might find useful for something like this. So you may have noticed when I showed this one, I had a deep socket shoved in it, okay? When they dry, they make a really good circular hole. And that's what I would recommend anybody using, is a deep socket. But if you have a wooden dowel that's big enough, that works. But what you'll want to make sure you do, okay, when you get it in there, work it in, is you'll want to get that twisted in as deep as you possibly can. And I just work it back and forth. till I get that in there as deep as I possibly can. Then I'll kind of look at it, straighten it up a little bit, and see what it looks like, and then I'll set this off to dry for a couple of days. And as it dries, and as I showed previous, it dries around the shape of the socket. For me, this is just very convenient. Okay, so I'm going to go set that off, let it dry, and then I'll show you the complete product once I get the cream of wheat out of it. Generally, it just takes tipping it upside down, back of a spoon or something, and just knock it out. Now look at it, bang it some more, get most of it out of there. Now let me show you what I do at this point. So I use lead round ball. You can use marbles. I'll put 3 or 4 or 5 of them in there, plug the hole, then I'll just work the round ball around, and it knocks loose all the cream of wheat that might still be stuck to the side of the rawhide bag. You can see I took quite a bit out. I don't know how well the camera can pick it up, but there was still quite a bit. And if you can look through the ball bag, you can still see that there's still some more in it, because you can see where it's still stuck to the rawhide. And if you can also look, I don't know how well the camera's picking it up, but if you look right through here, you can see daylight through the stitching. And once again, as I explained, as they dry, they'll shrink and it'll pull away from the stitching just a little bit. Again, you can go through and put some beeswax on it, and it'll seal it right up. And if you don't happen to have sockets to put in there, and if you're going to make these small ones, a Sharpie works really well. You can just work it in there, and like I said, you'll want to get it in as deep as you can, just simply because when you get done, you want to have the hole clear and straight all the way through. If you don't push your socket or whatever you use, a dowel, in deep enough, then as it dries, it's going to cause a restriction right about in through here. So that's the reason why you want to make sure that whatever you're using to create your circle up here, you want it deep enough so that when it dries, you get a straight hole through it. Okay, and then my last and final part to this is, because I have a wooden lathe, I can make my own stoppers, and each stopper is unique, and I make them so that they fit really, really good and tight. Okay, and the other thing, another good reason to coat this with beeswax is that if you live in a climate that's prone to high humidity, these will soften up. So if you put a beeswax on it, or any type of wax, it'll help prevent that from happening. So, the rest of it is up to your imagination now. I've showed you the basics of doing this. I want to thank you for watching, and everybody have a great day. Bye.